Luca, did you know that the average time to hire in Germany is around 55 days, which is 45% higher than the global average? And that is very, very bad, to
Oh,
be
no,
honest.
that's insane. That's insane. I knew it was going to be higher than other countries, but that's insanely long. Okay.
Yeah, so this is the topic for today. What are the implications of long time to hire, but then also how can it be improved so that companies can really make sure they are not losing talents on the way? Hi, this is Laura, and you're listening to the CareerBee Talks podcast, where we share all the newest insights on the recruiting world from both sides, the candidate perspective and the company perspective. Let's jump right in. Well, let us start really by understanding a little bit what could be prolonging the process here in Germany specifically. And I will start with the first thing, because that was something I learned when I started my career in Germany. I didn't know about it before, which is the so-called Betriebsrat, the Works Council, which of course has many benefits as well. I don't want to talk bad about the Works Council. But, sometimes these processes that have to go through so many approval steps simply make the process until you have the contract signed very, very long, which also implies the risk of some people losing interest, getting other offers faster, and then signing a contract with another company and you lost talent, right? So that would be one of the reasons that comes to my mind that could be prolonging the process.
Yeah, yeah, definitely important. So you have maybe more employee representational steps to take. It's not so easy. It's not like we don't have this hire and fire culture, so to say, right? It takes long if you want to basically lay someone off. It's a very complicated process. And on the other side of the coin is that also hiring someone takes a little bit longer. You need to register the new employee and everything. Yeah, so that's definitely it. Something else that is a lot of times. Yeah, quite visible to me, so to say, is a cultural difference in the sense of expected time for digital communication or expected response time, so to say. So I was recently working in a project with a company in Asia,
Hmm.
and this was really eye-opening to me, how fast I got a response if I sent an email to a manager. So I was just sending email. I think it was we had a candidate and we wanted someone. Was it from Malaysia? I don't remember where this person was located. We wanted to get a reference call with the previous manager. So manager doesn't know me. I sent an email in the morning time, their morning time. I get a response. They don't know me. 10 minutes later, I get a response. Hi, Luca. Thank you very much for your email. I have to go to a doctor's appointment right now, but I will call you back in 2 hours.
Hmm.
This person has never heard of me before, is doing me a favor, and I get a response within 10 minutes. Sorry, I can only talk in 2 hours. Is it okay?
Right.
So this is maybe that's a bit too extreme. I think so. I don't think you need to be as much reachable as this person. But this was just a shock to me because in Germany, first off, I don't think I would have gotten an answer probably at all to this email.
Hmm.
And second of all, maybe then after 2 weeks, I was expecting a call, right? So just as an example to show how long usually just like these processes are expected to take in different cultures. And
Yeah.
it goes in recruiting. It's just so many steps you have to take. Application goes in, candidate has to be informed, has to schedule a time, and so these times like they add up in the end. I assume we have a rather slow moving business culture.
Absolutely. And maybe to add to this cultural aspect, I also feel that in Germany, you know, the culture in general is not very fond of taking risks. And that also is seen in the recruiting process in the sense of really trying to make sure that the person we're hiring is a zero risk guarantee, right? And
Yeah.
I feel like in recruiting that's wrong, especially nowadays where, roles are changing so fast, expectations are changing so fast, businesses are changing so fast. But we're still hiring like back in the past where roles were very defined and you could stay doing the same job for, years and years and years. So what I want to say with how this prolongs the process. I feel sometimes companies take a long recruiting process in the sense of many interview steps just to ensure, like, did we really, really, really ensure that we get to know the person? And then on top, very long decision processes. So, taking time to really think through that. And that just, adds up to these 55 days where maybe a talent stayed, but maybe they already left. So I think also here being a little bit more open to, hiring maybe for potential at some points, it will help the whole business, the whole recruiting business move faster as well.
Yeah, it's a very good point. We don't like to take risks in Germany. And
Right.
I think the worst I have seen in a sense was a big corporate company. They had for every role 6 to 7 interview steps,
Wow.
which is insane, right? That's just too many. And please don't get me wrong in the sense that I want you to just do one interview and then hire every person on the spot. That's definitely not what I'm saying. Maybe here also a story. We're currently in a project where we're actually hiring multiple people in sales in this role, and it's an industry that is rather compared to your more corporate world. It's a rather fast moving industry.
Hmm.
It's not so reliable, and most people or most companies in the industry, they have one interview. And then they hire the person immediately. They send out contracts. They just want to get people in the door, right? And we said, no, that's not the right approach because there's a lot of quality issues. Then later, a lot of hires doesn't work out. We want to change that. So we want to be a very reliable company here. That was clear business direction, what they told me. And so we established at least like a two-step process, and that's perfectly fine. I would always recommend. So we first have a virtual interview, step number one, and then number two, there's an in-person step.
Hmm.
And we saw actually quite a dropout after the first interview. Video call is going well. We invite the person to the second in-person meeting, and we saw some dropout of candidates that we actually liked, and that we've also thought they liked us, but somehow they didn't show up then to the first interview. So we asked ourselves a lot of reflecting questions. Are we doing something wrong? Can we do it better? Should we be more closely following up with the candidates? Should we book them the train tickets and say ourselves directly? Or should we even get rid of the second step? And then the said, no, we actually don't want to do this. It's a very important quality step for us. It's like, will you show up for us in person? Because we need to know that you're a reliable person later on.
Hmm.
We are looking for the highest quality and higher to make. And I think that's super important. And so in the end, we decided to keep the step because we would just put the problems later on, right? So maybe then we can force them to come to, or we get rid and we directly send a contract before doing any additional step, or we force them to come to the second interview by following up super closely. And I said, no, that's not what we want because, yeah, maybe then we have a signed contract in the end, but then once it's starting, they will not show up, right? So
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
though we don't want to be, we ask ourselves, should we make it shorter process? We said, no, we want to stick with the 2 rounds, which is important for us. So 2 rounds, I would always recommend, but everything that is more than 2 or 3 rounds, that's just prolonging your hiring process without gaining new information. There's actually also studies in this. I think after the third interview round, you're not gaining any new insight into a candidate.
Mm.
So yeah, 2 or 3 rounds take a little bit of time, but not too much, and you're still going to smash the 55 days. You're going to be way faster with 2 steps you can do within 1 week or 2 weeks maximum, right?
Yeah, nice, nice. Very good information. I think now you've already passed on to really talk about, tips and insights on how to make sure you reduce your time to hire. And I think you already brought up a very good point. Maybe just to add one last issue that I've seen, and then let's really start this conversation that now you've started, which I think was a very, very interesting. Just the last issue that I see a lot of companies doing is how they are not really using, automation for themselves. And with that, I'm not saying like use, AI to do everything for you, and like, let's make this human less, this process less human as possible just to make it fast. That's not what I want to say, but I want to still encourage companies to be like, hey, should we still, track the CVs only in our email, where we will lose oversight eventually, and where we have to manually write every email and, track it? That's like nowadays not necessary anymore, because there are good solutions, even cheap solutions out there for smaller companies, and you should make use of them, because it will make your life easier, but it will also increase the experience of every single person that applies to your company. And you need to always be aware that even if you don't want that talent right now, maybe in 5 years they turn out to have this amazing experience that you need in your company. Now you want to attract them back, and if they had a bad experience with you, there's no chance they're going for your job, right? So always keep in mind that even if you're rejecting candidates, the experience needs to be great, and that's why you need to use technology, automation for your recruiting process, of course not taking away the human part of it. So that was just the last step. But now coming to what you said, which still is like, okay, how can we improve the time to hire? And now you gave us some good insights into, 3 is the maximum round that it should go. But I think what you said, and this is the important thing, is really think not about how to reduce the amount of interviews, but how to make the interviews as efficient as possible. In your case, it was inviting them in person, right? Because that shows some qualities that for this job are essential. And that's what I want companies to also think of. Like, if we had to reduce the amount of interviews we've had, which are the most essential steps that will give us the key information so that we can hire the best person instead of having to add 5 rounds, right? So I loved this example because it showed so many important things. In one example, like how many rounds to have, but then also how to make those rounds efficient.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So I have a prepared little list of things, kind of like best learnings from my 7 years now of
Awesome.
doing this. So if you want, I'm happy to just go through them, and I'm happy to hear your thoughts
Yeah,
also
let's do
of them.
that.
So number one tip would be you need to make recruiting a priority. I think that's where we need to start. This is not working. You cannot do recruiting on the side. And it's just something, if you are founder of a company, if you are a manager in a company, whatever, you need to understand this is something, it has nothing to do with your business success in the first place, in the sense of
Yeah.
it's not sales, it's not product development. It's a lot of times HR work. Oh, yeah, so we can do this on the side, right? Oh, yeah, it's just administration. And so it's not going to work. Recruiting you have to treat it like sales in a sense, that it's a very individualized process. Yes, you can do something with automation, as you said, to help, but in the end, it's still going to be discussions with humans face to face. And so hiring needs to be your priority. And the best companies, they have understood this. And hiring is in their DNA, and they make room for interviews. They prioritize it accordingly. So this is number one, is just ask yourself, are you prioritizing this as a very crucial business step? Because without good people, your business is probably not going to work or expand unless you are a solo founder or solo freelancer. Of course, then you don't need to hire anyone.
Hmm.
Um, so this is tip number one. Um,
I
Tip
love it.
number two, very
Mhm.
good, very good. Tip number two is what I would recommend. Before you start hiring, clarify what is your decision criteria. So is who is capable of doing this job? Who do you want? So you need to have a list of things that you are looking for and things that you don't want, right? And so you need to do this before starting, because if you actually start recruiting and then you change your criteria throughout the process, well, then you have to start all over again. Yeah, so I
Yeah.
would say that's also fundamental. So fundamental number one is that make it a priority, and then fundamental number two is you need to have clear criteria of who you want, what do you need, what skills do you require.
Yeah.
What do you think about those basics as fundamentals, Laura?
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think the second point that you pointed out is also so important because, of course, as we go through the interview process, we get to know people that bring things that are on top, like really, really nice. And sometimes in the process, we get confused by those things and we're like, oh, yeah, this person doesn't have that, but they have this other thing. And if we didn't in the beginning define what we really care about, the decision is going to be almost impossible. And then we start thinking like, let's do another interview just to ensure like who of these two people is the best. But if we had
Mhm.
clarified and had this list in the beginning on, we would already know. So I think this is very important to have.
Yeah, yeah, and that's basically like that's how my brain works now after 7 years. It's like immediately when I talk to a manager about what they want in my head, I'm doing those things, and you can do this as well. Everything they say, I'm categorizing as either a must-have
Right.
or a nice to have, right? And this is really important to differentiate because everything is important. If you just tell me what is important, I'll end up with a list of 30 things. No one is going to fulfill this. So what
Yeah.
is a must-have criteria? A must-have criteria are only criteria that are so important that we say if one is not given, the person will not be considered anymore for this job, right? So this is quite important. So, for example, let's talk about an IT role, a coding role. Let's make, for example, a Java developer. And I say, well, what does the person? Yeah, education in IT related field would be good, right? They should have studied software development when I asked them. So, question is this like absolutely mandatory? If someone has not studied software development, can this person do the job? Yes or no? And we realize, oh, actually, yeah, there might be a way to teach this to yourself because coding follows clear rules. So maybe has some other than a university education in this. And so we realize, no, it's actually not a must-have criteria. It's good to have. So that's the definition of a nice-to-have criteria. A
Yeah.
nice-to-have criteria is a criteria that is helpful and good if someone brings that, but it doesn't self-select or it doesn't select people out. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's not. Yeah, and that's really important to make this differentiation. And you should have in the end like maybe three must-haves, maybe five, but that's already going to be a difficult search. And then maybe five nice-to-haves. That's okay. But yeah, must-haves I'm
Hmm.
always aiming for three. And then I have a clear decision rule. I can go through a CV of a candidate and I can see are those three things that we define as must have given. If yes, great, they're going to get an interview. If not, they're not going to get an
Yeah.
interview. And then you save so much time.
Hmm. Yeah. That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Curious to hear what other things are on your list.
Yeah, so um, maybe then more operational, so to say. I think you already mentioned this a little bit. So now we know exactly which candidates we want to
Hmm.
interview, we don't want to interview, and you still might run into the issue. Well, I am in HR, for example. I am a person who's working in HR. I want to do this interview together with the manager of the department. So now I have three candidates that fulfill our must-have criteria. I'm looking into the calendars and I say, I'm not available this week. The manager is not available next week. Oh, and then I have a vacation plan. Oh, and then it's a public holiday. And okay, we can do the interview maybe in 4 weeks, right? So
Right.
again, this is also where a lot of these 50, 55 days or whatever it was is coming from.
Hmm.
So what you should do is plan vacations ahead of time. Again, when you think about your list of must-have and nice-to-have criteria, also think about the timing. So when do we actually want to interview candidates? Can we maybe pre-book interview slots already in the calendar
Yeah.
so that the manager's calendar doesn't fill up when everyone wants something of them? Yeah. So really schedule this in advance. Use, okay, I'm going to post a job right now. Probably in 1 or 2 weeks, I'm going to have a lot of applications. So in 1 or 2 weeks, I should make some time already for interview slots that I then can
Yeah.
book my candidates into. This will help you a lot with saving time.
Yeah, I mean, we've done this with one of our clients in the past, where like every Friday, I think at to between 10 to 12, they had like reserved this slot for us where we could put in interviews. And I mean, if an interview didn't happen, it's not like they were complaining; they could use the time to work, you know.
Or something
So,
else. Yeah, yeah.
so that was a great idea of how we did it with, a client where we were helping them find somebody, but you can also do that internally in your company with your hiring managers.
Yeah, yeah. So, and I think you can do this throughout the process, right? You can do it for first round interviews, then you can do it for second round. The process should already be established. I always recommend nowadays first round interview we do it virtually to save time. People don't have to drive to you. Your candidates don't have to come personally. And then second round we do in person. And then if we are sure with the decision, then we're making an offer. Maybe optionally there's a round three. If someone else wants to talk to them, okay. But then you have very clear process. You can usually do this in 2 to 4 weeks, and then yeah, you can basically half your time
Right.
to hire if you follow this. There's one final point on
Mm-hmm.
my list. So now in theory, everything is perfectly set up, right? We have our list of criteria. We have pre-scheduled everything. We know exactly what step is going to happen when. And then we post our job online and no one applies. And next week we are again looking through the application system, and again no applicant. Maybe one applicant, but they don't fulfill our must-have criteria.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm trying to say
Yeah.
is having the greatest process in place doesn't help if you can get access to good candidates, right? So lastly, my last tip is the third tip is and really work together with experts in recruiting. It's a very difficult job. A good recruiter is worth a lot of money to your organization. They can save you time of hiring. Your new salesperson, for example, can start 1 month earlier. Great, they're already making 50 to 100,000 in revenue in that month. That's worth a lot to you as a company. So really work together with experts, for example, like us. If you have some other experts, of course, work with them and invest a little bit into getting a good recruitment service. I think in the end it will really pay off. And it doesn't help if you don't get good candidates. You're just wasting a lot of times where we could have found some good candidates for you already.
Exactly. So if you're feeling like you're not getting the right candidates, this is also a great best practice to get those 55 days down and really
Yeah.
start, growing your team with the right people. Because something that we didn't mention is that the longer the hiring process goes, I mean, the risks are definitely, losing candidates, but also your employer branding per se on those people that went through the process or not. And then lastly, also a problem of, motivation and efficiency within the company, because employees now have to do work overtime or do things that they were not part of their original task just because nobody else is doing that. So then thinking about working with an external partner maybe can be a great way of, overcoming those challenges. But yeah, thank you so much, Luca. I think it was a very interesting episode. Of course, if anybody has some more tips or insights, feel free to use the comments to share also your questions. And we will also leave our email in the show notes, so you can always reach out to us in case you're currently in the process of finding somebody but having difficulties. We're happy to get those people into your organization. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you are a company who's currently looking to expand their team with amazing talent, make sure to check out our website, careerbeat.io, to learn more about our recruiting services and how we can help you find the best candidate for your open roles. On the other side, if you are a candidate who's currently looking to find a job in the US or Germany, make sure to explore our website, careerbeat.io/talents, to see how our masterclass and our additional career services can get you to find your dream job. In any case, you can always reach out to our team via the email team@careerbeat.io. We are so happy to continue sharing many more insights around recruiting and job searching.